So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I can position the pan. It almost makes like a little trough here for the oil to come out of the steering box down here and drip into the pan. And I can take this off, and if I move that over just a little bit like that, I can also drain this little guy right here, which is the drain for the oil filter. There's a little cup inside the oil filter, and you need to get that oil out too. So we'll take that out. And I meant to do this last year, but I didn't. And it's due for service anyway. So we'll get all these. It doesn't look like there's much oil in there. This one here is a good way to pinch your fingers up against that steering shaft too. I got it loosened up. It must have been painted on or something. One thing you have to be careful with on the oil pan is it's just tack welded on, and if you bust that off, you either have to change your oil pan or weld it, or find somebody that can weld it, because I've had that happen. This round thing right here, I don't know if you can see that. Let's see. That right there, there's a round on it, and if you bust that off from here, you've got a world of trouble. Remember, I think lefty loosey, righty tighty, but upside down. Otherwise you break that little ear off like the other side. Alright, get that loosened up and take this right off. And when this comes out, it's going to kind of puke out, so don't drop your plug down there and then just kind of yank it. There it is. There's some nasty oil. And this one in here needs to come off. This will drain a little bit easier if I pull the dipstick out on the other side. You don't have to actually remove it, just pull it out so it vents. And then I think that up there is 5/8. And maybe 3/4. We'll try that one first. I think it's 5/8. No, it is 3/4. I think the Cub is a cute design, probably one of the cutest tractors ever made. And they were made to get the last of the holdout farmers that still had 1 or 2 horses, and it was designed for the farmer with 40 acres or less. But it was also a good secondary tractor on, medium-sized farms, because you could just leave the mower on it and do some you could still pull a cart around with it, and then you'd have the other tractor freed up. What you'd find a lot of times is people would just buy 2 or 3 Cubs and then leave attachments on. And I know that sounds like it would cost a lot of money, but time is money too. The only thing I really don't like about there's 2 things that I don't care about too much. One, they don't have sleeves. So if you have to get your motor done, you have to have it bored out, and machine work is going to cost you a lot of money. You'll have $2,000 in a motor job, no problem. And then the second thing is that in order to get at the top of the motor, you have to take the tank off. And so a lot of people don't put their headlights back on, and consequently when the Cubs get sold, the headlights are missing. And you take your top off, Here's the gasket under there, don't lose that. We want to get this all cleaned up before we put it back on. I'm just going to grab the oil filter element out of there. And just lift it straight up and it'll come right out. And your new one should come with a new rubber O-ring. So we just drop this back in the same way the old one came out. Put your new O-ring on. Well, the hardest part here is to get the screw or the bolt line back up. And this is where it's a little overcrowded in here. All we have to do is, I got some new oil here. And this is where a lot of people get huffy. But with these old tractors that have not been rebuilt, my recommendation is always straight 30 weight, but non-detergent. And if you put detergent oil in to a tractor that hasn't been rebuilt and is, I don't know, 75 years old, 80 years old, and it's got all that sludge in there, and you put detergent oil in it, it starts breaking that sludge out. Next thing you know, your sump down here gets plugged up, and then you've got a catastrophic engine problem because your sump is plugged up and your oil's not pumping through. So if you want to start running detergent oil, the way that you can do that, as I've been told, is you can put some kerosene in there and run it briefly with kerosene, and then drain the oil a couple times, put high detergent, run it for a few minutes, drain it, and you'll end up doing it a bunch of times before it'll be what you want. But that's how you can do it. Now, some people would say, Tom, you're an idiot, put the oil on there first. Well, you can do it however you want, as long as you oil it. Like I said, I can spin this right in there. No sweat for me. As long as I get oil on it, it doesn't matter. Once you have that seated back down right, so your wrench is going to go the right way again. And then tighten it down. This tractor has a Magneto on it, so I need to put just a few drops of oil in that little impulse coupler. And there's a little flip up right here. And you don't need very much in there, just a little bit. And here's one thing I see asked all the time is, what are these two holes for? Well, your generator is sitting right there, and your generator has two of these little cups, one on each side, so those bearings just need a little bit of oil, and that's what I'm going to do next. Hard to get to and very hard to see. So again, if you have big hands, you might want to take the whole tank off, but I can just barely get up under there. And once I feel it, I'm good. So there it is, and then you put this through, and I can guide it in with my hand. And you come back around to the left side of the motor. This right here is your air filter. Air cleaner, not a filter. There's no filter in there. The filter is the oil. There's this cup. And so we're going to take that oil out of that, dump it. And what this oil does, you can see it trapped a bunch of water. What this oil does is the air comes through and the particles are trapped in the oil before being drawn into the motor. So it's an oil bath air cleaner. A lot of times on these old tractors you'll find that the air cleaner is actually rotted out in the bottom, and it's because they didn't get serviced and they filled up with water and they rusted from the inside out. Maybe I just haven't looked hard enough. I've seen replacement oil filter cups for like the Super C and the A, etc. The Donaldson air cleaner, which is pretty universal. The Fords used them too. But unless I've missed them somewhere, I've never seen the Cub air cleaner cup, oil filter, whatever you want to call it, air filter cup. Oil bath air filter, air cleaner. Like I said, there's no filter per se. The oil is the filter, but it's one of those words that you just want to say. Put this all up here. All right, I think I got that back on. And without dropping my oil, making a mess, let's take two. There's two little holes with a kind of a flap in there that sticks up in those little wires. It's like a coat hanger wire with a twist on it, kind of like an old mason jar. Basically, it's the same idea. You know, you're flipping a bale over the top to latch it. So that's done. There's a couple of books you need for your Farmall, and one of them obviously is the owner's manual, but the second one is this blue ribbon service manual, which has a lot of the service points in the manual, but it also goes into a little bit more depth in a lot of different places for troubleshooting, how to rebuild the governor, the carburetor, you know, get into everything. Change out the clutch, the power takeoff, your hydraulic system. Everything is in this book, and so it's not that expensive to get one, but I highly recommend one. All right, I've got my plug back on the oil filter. I got this one put back on, and I'm going to take the level plug out. And am I going to go to hell if I use a John Deere wrench on an IH tractor? Probably. So here's the owner's manual, and you can see it's pretty well worn. That's because I've used it a lot, but when you go, I don't know, page 19 in here, it shows you the lubrication guide. So crankcase oil, did that. Air cleaner cup, we did that. The steering knuckles, did that. So I've done a couple things that aren't on, I didn't show you today. One of them was grease the tractor. When I had the front wheels off, I repacked the bearings because I put new bearings in, and then I greased everything with the grease gun. So the tie rods, front axle pivot, there's one bolt in there for the front axle to oscillate on, so you don't forget that one. If you've got a spring instead of a cushion seat, you've got a little spot right here, you oil it. And let's see, that up here, this one doesn't have a grease fitting on it, so you have to put a few drops of light oil in there, and that will take care of that. Let's see, generator oiled, and let's see, power takeoff. There's one fitting on your power takeoff, which I got. Your fan hub, I got that. I did the Magneto. And then, so with the transmission, with the gear oil and the transmission, when I put this bent shifter on to put the cushion seat in, I've already drained and redone all the transmission and rear end gear oil. So that's all done. And there's some little cups that hang down on the final drive, and the only way to service those is to remove it. And there's probably like 8 bolts, 10 bolts on that, and you have to take those all off to get to it. But that's not necessary. And where those are, it's right down here underneath the axle. You'll see them. It's a little round thing that's bolted up under a little pan. So looks like we're all oiled up. And this thing will take 3 quarts bone dry, but good luck getting all the oil out. Even don't just dump 3 quarts of oil in there. Go about 2, and then start slowly adding more and let it sit. You want to let that sit because you're getting oil on the sides of that sleeve that the dipstick goes in, so you'll get some misreadings if you don't let the oil set down in there. So remember too that once you start it up, your oil filter is bone dry, so it's going to take a second for the pressure to put oil in that filter, so that'll make your oil go down just a little bit. So run it for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and then shut it off and check it again. So once we got it started again, or I started it again, I checked the oil pressure gauge came up, checked for leaks. So I let it run for a couple minutes and watch it to make sure there's nothing coming out of it that shouldn't be seeping around or anything. And I'm gonna take it for a ride. That cub running down the road, full wide open, sound like a sewing machine. This one pretty much does. back and get the animals fed, and I'm not going to drag you through that. So I appreciate you watching, and thanks for sticking around with me today. I'll talk to you next time. Already, please take a moment, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit like, comment, and also click the bell icon so that you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks a lot.